This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to the latest episode of Doc and Jock, featured on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. I am the Doc, John Macaron. Joining me on this frigid, cold-ass Wednesday is my guy, Adam, the Jock Straczynski. What's up, cuz? How you doing? How you living? Hell, I don't even know what day it is, what time it is. All I know is my brain is frozen. It is cold out there. We are living through hell. I feel like we got it light with the weather last year. This is pure hell. It's actually Tuesday when we're talking, but listen, man, there's so much.
I was going to let it go, man. I was just going to let it go.
Yeah, no, it's good, man. I know what day it is. It's just when you're talking, you're freezing, you're trying to de-thaw, all this stuff going on. Every 5 minutes, there's news related to the Detroit Lions, the Pistons. Wings got so much going on. It's great. And then this is a big week, too. Friday is Michigan State. Michigan's going to play Nebraska, I believe, in hoops. So lots of good shit going on in the world of sports. But I'm curious because Amon-Ra St Brown may not be, I thought he would be, may not be a fan of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network because of the fact that we're highly critical of almost everything all the teams do, even our beloved alma maters. We look at things with a critical eye, and we probably never will stop. And especially when we're sitting there watching the Patriots get back to the Super Bowl in 1 year, spending, cheap quarterback, making deals, doing things, interestingly. And then the Seahawks, they win a Super Bowl, lose a Super Bowl, rebuild, and get back to the Super Bowl with a quarterback that was a cast-off. So you just sit there and go, man, this Detroit Lions team, what are they doing? They're going out and getting guys from the Cardinals and the Giants. And you're like, Mike McDonald joins Jim Harbaugh. So you're like, okay, whatever. And then Amon-Ra St Brown and his podcast, which I love. I am a listener. I like it. It's very popular. He actually adds to the podcast world. But he went out there in his latest episode, and he was like, listen, people, do you think that Dan Campbell don't know what he's doing? What's wrong with you? And he took the stereotypical athlete approach, but he added a little zing and salt, which he didn't need to add, which is, you all don't know much about anything about football. And he was like, do you think there's no plan? We don't interview. And I think the biggest thing that, and I'm curious what your reaction is, the biggest thing that Lions fans said was, did you forget quickly that the Lions just fired John Morton? They were in the past interested in a running offensive coordinator with Anthony Lynn. They fired him. So yes, there is skepticism, and the trust erodes. When you don't make the playoffs, the trust erodes, and that's just the way it is. Fans should take a critical look, and I just felt like Amon-Ra made a misstep when he said that he could have said everything that he said. Just don't question the fans, in my opinion, because I think that Detroit fans are in the know. They watch film. They listen to many podcasts. They're involved. They support YouTube channels. They support independent podcasts. They support everything, and it's absolutely amazing what the fans here locally should do. And also, too, the Lions actually added to the offensive staff to maybe even help Drew Petzing, who's hired now, is official. What was your reaction to it? Do you think that maybe because of the fact that everyone's highly charged because they didn't make the playoffs, that everybody's just way over their skis, too emotional, and not letting things play out? Listen, we're never going to be the Let It Play Out podcast. No, we give opinions every week. What do we think in the time? Because listen, in this weather, who the hell knows? I may decide to go running shirtless and not make it back. Who the hell knows? No one's guaranteed tomorrow, so we talk about today. And that's how we operate. That's how we will always operate. And give me your hot take, brother. What the hell's going on? Are you upset with Amon-Ra St Brown? Or are you like, you know what? Based on who the hell replies to our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, maybe he's right.
I mean, look, you may go running topless. You are now back at the gym. You are falling in love with all of the gym bunnies. So kudos to you for again, taking your health serious and getting it out there and doing things. I know it's a grind when the NFL season rolls around. You don't get to do all the things that you want to do. You don't have time to necessarily do all the things that you need to do. And so I'm happy that you're prioritizing your health and you're getting back to the gym. So you may go running topless when it's 1 degree outside and frigid. I would not recommend it. It's very, very cold. You need to try to stay as warm as possible right now. It's gnarly out. But all that being said, you said something there in your setup. The day that we stop looking at things critically, the day that we stop challenging and questioning everything, the day that we start glad handing for teams, that's the day you should turn this podcast off and not listen anymore. Don't listen to us anymore the day that we start doing that. Then we're not being true to you. We're not being true to ourselves. We question everything. We go back and forth with each other. We put these things down on paper. We put these things in group chats, and we go back and forth, and we question everything that's going on. So when Drew Petzing is hired, we have a conversation before we come on air and start talking about these things. I think it's okay to question this hire. I think it's okay to look at this with a little bit of skepticism. Like you said, this is Dan Campbell's fourth OC in just about as many years. You hire Anthony Lynn, and then you shit-can him a few weeks into the season. You then stumble upon Ben Johnson, who thankfully that worked out, to then let him go over to Chicago, which good for him. He got a head coaching job, and he's done an amazing job over there in 1 year, to then hiring John Morton, who gets fired pretty quickly. And I think the writing was on the wall. You talked about it during last year's offseason. It just didn't look right, didn't feel right. He ends up getting fired because the offense doesn't look right, doesn't feel right in the regular season, to then him taking plays over. And that still doesn't look right, doesn't feel right. The whole team doesn't look right, doesn't feel right. They don't get to the playoffs. They end up losing 2 key games to Minnesota, and you lost one of those games to Boersma, who's is a quarterback who should not even be in the NFL. The guy is absolute garbage and is trash, and he made you look ridiculous. I think he threw for like 13 yards. So nothing is good. Like nothing is good. This last season for the Detroit Lions was not good. And speaking of things that weren't good, Amon-Ra St Brown's performance last season, not good. Not good enough. I don't know if you're dealing with a hand injury. I don't know if there's something else going on. I don't know if maybe you're reading your own press clippings. But you didn't perform up to the standard that you have set. And that's the standard that we hold you to. So then when you get on your podcast with your brother and you start talking shit about the fans, and you start talking shit about people questioning the OC hire, bro, I don't want to hear your mouth. I don't want to hear you. I know you don't want to hear from the fans, but bro, I don't want to hear from you. I want you to go to Cancun. I want you to go to somewhere warm. Go lay on the beach. Go relax. Go rehab. Go get better. Go get your mind right. So next season, you can come in and live up to that standard that you have set. Live up to that standard that you have established. Because you didn't do that this year. You didn't do that this year. You came into the season and you look cocky. You look arrogant. Your quarterback looked cocky. Your quarterback looked arrogant. Your head coach looked cocky. Looked arrogant. So when people start questioning the hire of a new OC, I think fans have every right to question that, especially when you've got a mad offensive genius like McDaniel out there, and you pass on him. You say, no, you're not good enough. You don't fit in our room. What does that look like? Because this guy is amazing with what he can do offensively, schematically. The guy has a brain that just does not shut off when it comes to the offensive side of the playbook. And that's a guy that, I don't know, checks notes, would love to have on this team, would love to have to unlock new levels of potential for a guy like, checks notes, Amon-Ra St Brown, J-Mo, Gibbs, helping put golf in a better spot to where he could be a little bit more accurate, complete more passes, score more touchdowns for this team. I don't know, a guy like Sam Laporta taking the next step in his development. I would love to have a mad scientist like that, a guy who can sit there and develop plays basically in the sand and say, let's go execute this, and this is going to work. I would love to have a guy like that. Instead, you get a guy like Drew Petzing. And look, I made the case last week. I think Drew Petzing could work out. I do still think it can work out. But that being said, would I much rather have McDaniel? Yeah, I would.
And look, because I want to ask you this. Because it's so true. I think this is where we can see the philosophy. Dan Campbell would rather sacrifice pure overall ranking talent versus somebody who will remain loyal and that they can develop. Like I feel like they don't want a ready-made coach. They want somebody that is moldable, and not that they can control, but it feels like they just want somebody that's not at the same maybe level or greater than Dan Campbell, which to me, I understand sustained success, fit in the room. But to me at this point, as a fan, I don't care about sustained success. I don't care about future goals. I don't care if he's here for a cup of coffee September to January, win a Super Bowl, win 4 playoff games, and get us as close as possible. I feel like Dan should hire better than himself, not equal to or lesser than, in order to get this. I feel like the mountain of a Super Bowl, is Mount Everest. And the Lions are willing to get there, and they're willing to climb the mountain, but I don't know if they're willing to hit the summit. That's what I feel. I feel like Kafka, and we're going to talk about him shortly, and Petzing, I feel like they're guys that he wants to work with, but guys that he feels he can interject some of his own stuff and blend as well. I don't know. It doesn't feel to me that Dan Campbell is willing to go out. Like, just look at the news that broke on Tuesday. It was interesting. A lot of these coaches are pairing up with other coaches, and Robert Saleh gets Brian Daboll potentially. I love that pairing. I love the pairing that potentially Gannon goes to the Packers as a defensive coordinator. I like that idea, but I'm not seeing it with the Lions to just say, you know what, let's just get the best of the best. I don't want somebody that is rising on the job. I want somebody ready-made, cooked, and let's go. Come do the job and help us win the ultimate goal, in my opinion.
I think that's a perfect jump off for a question that we had later on in the show. When you look around the league, do you feel like this organization operates with that urgency to win now, that operation to go all in to get a Super Bowl? Because I think you're laying the case out perfectly. I don't feel it from the general manager. I don't feel it from the head coach. I feel like with the head coach, like you said, he wants guys that are a few levels beneath him that he can help elevate up, which, hey, that's fantastic. I love having a guy who likes to help mold and develop and teach and build guys up and get them to where they need to be. I love that. I think you need that as a head coach. But that being said, when you look around the league and you've got a guy like Brian Daboll, who's a fantastic mind. If you go back and you look at what Josh Allen did, Josh Allen's steps forward to become this elite quarterback were because of Daboll. He's a fantastic offensive mind. You could have brought him here. That's also Dan Campbell's buddy. Now, I know that personality-wise, they're a little bit different. Daboll's a little bit more high-strung, a little bit more fiery. Dan Campbell, obviously fiery. I wouldn't necessarily classify him as high-strung, though. McDaniel, the complete polar opposite. Probably a little bit too laid back and probably a little bit more go with the flow. But that being said, the guy has the knack to build offenses that get the job done. And if you could put these pieces in your coaching staff, why would you not? And then when you look at the other side of the ball, you look at the defensive side of the ball, I don't feel like this team has done anything to help bolster that defensive coaching staff. Yes, I think Kelvin Shepard was an okay hire. But again, there were better guys out there. You talked about Gannon. You could have went out there and grabbed him. You could have added him to this staff, and you could have made him your DC. There are other guys. Brian Flores, you could have went out there and grabbed him or interviewed him or talked to him about bringing him in. And look, that's a guy who can get it done multiple ways. He's got no problem building a defense that is based upon a secondary first scheme because he did it in Minnesota. He's also a guy who in Minnesota built it by having a defensive line that just gets to the quarterback. If you look at the games that the Detroit Lions lost, and the reason they're outside of the playoffs was because Brian Flores' defenses frustrated Jared Goff. And he went on record even of saying they did stuff that we weren't necessarily prepared for. They threw stuff at us that we just couldn't adjust to. That's a pretty good defensive coordinator. And the reason that they won those 2 games were because of him. And the reason that they're the 3rd seed in the NFC North and you're the 4th is because of Brian Flores. Yet you don't want to bring that in. You don't want to make this coaching staff that much better. To me, those things are frustrating, and I question the will to win, because if you're telling me that it's Super Bowl or bust and you've got to go all out and you've got to do these things, you're just not making the moves that are necessary to do these things. You're not making the moves that are necessary to win the Super Bowl. And you go out, you bring in a guy like Kefka. I don't necessarily understand what his role is going to be, because Petzing is a very good run game coordinator, right? He's very good with the run game. Kefka's supposed to be really good with the pass game. So if he's going to be your pass game coordinator, which is fine, he's got an untitled offensive position right now, which I think is so weird. What are you doing with David Shaw? Because isn't he your pass game coordinator? Wasn't that also the role that John Morton played when you had John Morton? How many chefs do you need in the kitchen for the offensive play calling? And if you need to go out and you need to grab a guy like this, what does that tell you about your OC that you hired? Because now this goes back to the Amon-Ra St Brown conversation that we are just having. Whereas now I think we're allowed to question that hire a little bit more when you're going out and you're bringing in another offensive coordinator, a guy who seems to be, in the grand scheme of the NFL, a young and up-and-coming head coach, a guy who is talked about very highly and highly regarded. Now, I think that's a fantastic thing to bring him into the room and to get him here, but he's getting added to your offensive coordinator staff. And it doesn't really seem or feel like your offensive coordinator, the guy that Amon-Ra St. Brown says that we can't question and we can't wonder why they hired him, doesn't seem like he's brought any of his own guys over. And it doesn't seem like he's moved out any of the old pieces that were here. This feels and sounds like it's very much still a Dan Campbell operation, and the OC has to get in line underneath Dan Campbell and doesn't have the autonomy to hire his own staff. And this feels like this Kefka signing, which you'll have to explain to me why they're bringing him in and what he's doing. That feels like that's a Dan Campbell and an organizational move, not a Drew Petzing move.
Right. And so here's what we know as of Tuesday. And so Scotty Montgomery's the wide receivers coach, and we still know that Brunell's still on the staff. You never know. You never know what's going to happen. The official, what we've heard, is high-level offensive staffer, whatever that means. But first and foremost, you have to look at Kafka's history, a former NFL quarterback. They like that. And he had a chance potentially to audition. The Lions played the Giants, and the Giants went all out. They were aggressive. They were throwing things all over the wall. They embarrassed our linebacker with a pass to Jameis Winston. And Dan Campbell's looking at that like, okay, this guy's got some balls to try this at Ford Field. And first and foremost, you look at his resume. He worked with Patrick Mahomes, and he worked with Andy Reid, and he's got some pedigree, and he's a fast-rising coach. And I think that Dan Campbell is wanting some additional ideas offensively to add to the mix. And I think that's smart. I think the Kafka hire helps to offset the Drew Petzing hire. And if Petzing is a whiz and is one of those guys that told everybody, look, I'm down for the cause, but I want to be, and every coach wants to be an NFL head coach. If he's already interviewed, Drew Petzing has one good year, teams might come calling just to screw with the Lions. So you have potentially somebody that can slide in that's in your staff that you can say, okay, if Petzing's on the rise and he's a wheeling, dealing son of a gun, he's going to be a short-termer 1 or 2 years. Now you got somebody that has ideas in place. And so I like that. To me, to your point earlier, I like the idea of, smart minds in the room, but I don't know if they're the absolute smartest minds. And I'm more, at this point with the Lions, willing to be more radical. Like I would have hired McDaniel. I would have hired Gannon. I would have hired some guys that were former NFL coaches because, like I said, I feel like to reach the summit with the Detroit Lions. Now, this is Lions history. It just feels like the Lions will never get the same luck that the Patriots just got this year with the weak-ass schedule that they had in the in the AFC Championship. They end up with a backup quarterback. That is luck on the level of craziness that the football gods are like, okay, let's bestow upon the Patriots another run, where you realize, how the hell is it possible they sink to the bottom? Because they're still paying $30 million to the former regime. They had to pay half of the coaching staff. You get your guy who also is a culture guy who played there. He comes in, he gets a ready-made quarterback cheap. So when you have a cheap quarterback, hint, hint, you now have a lot more money to be able to go and spend in free agency. Wow, 19 free agent contracts. What do you know? First in spending. What do you know? And we can't do that because we're paying our quarterback $69 million. Yeah, you're restructuring, but at the same token, you are hindering how much is in the bank to be able to go out and get the best guys. So instead of getting primo great guys like a Milton Williams, you're trying to go out there and get a DJ Reader who's older and a veteran, and he has one good year and the second year falls off. That's the difference, is that everything, the stars have to align, and there's a lot of different ways to win. But at the same token, I'm over the slow and steady Turtles type stuff. Dude, we're damn near 50 years old, and now we're at the point where, listen, one before I die, I don't care if you build a sustained winner, because you're not going to win 12 games a year with Jared Goff. You just aren't. One guy gets injured on your offensive line, and he's running for his life. Let's be real here. So I'm more of the opinion to be more radical, and the Lions are, a little bit more safe. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be that way anymore. I want to be aggressive. I want to push for 1 or 2 years, take the chance. And Dan Campbell's right, cuz he was right. He's always been honest. He said, 2023 was our Patriots year. You have a young team. Nobody's bestowed with all this cash. You have a hungry team, and they don't know any better, and you have everything in place. So Dan knew that was a Super Bowl year, and they messed up by bringing Donovan Peoples-Jones as that year should have been the year where Brad pushed, sacrificed. Look, in the end, if you would have sacrificed the first and second round picks of 2024, would anybody care? No. You move on and you figure out how to live life without Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw. You would have been okay, in my opinion. So that's where it's tough. And technically, this first window closed. They have to retool. They have to, move on from Decker and Graham Glasgow and DJ Reader and Alex Anzalone. 30% of your roster is over. You got to move forward and be a little bit more radical. And I do think that Kafka adds additional ideas, but my humble opinion is that for the Lions, ideally, this is idealistic. Everybody's kumbaya, they're friendly, and they get along, and everything works. But this is the Lions, and being realistic, I just think that the next step is to hire coaches at the highest possible level to match the talent that's on there. And I'm not so certain that Kafka and Petzing are going to out-scheme Vrabel and Josh McDaniel. That's just point blank, period. And I don't think that they can out-scheme potentially Ben Johnson and his crew. So we shall see. But you're right. The urgency's not there. It's just not there. It's always like we're okay. We feel like we can rebound and get to where
we're good.
Need to go. I want more urgency. I want to be urgent. Trade up. Take 2 first-round picks this year. Do some things and put yourself in a position where people say, okay.
Be aggressive.
Yeah,
be
your
aggressive.
nuts are on the table here, and show us that you want to win now, because nobody cares if you win in 2028. By that point, you would have exhausted everybody by that point, and everybody's going to be like, too tired to celebrate because they've been so pissed at what you're doing.
And look, I think that's the frustrating part about this season. When you watch the NFL playoffs and you watch them from a Lions perspective, it's a lot of what could have been. You look at who's playing in the Super Bowl. For God's sake, it's Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold has the ability, and if I'm being completely honest with you, I believe Sam Darnold's going to win a Super Bowl. And he's going up against a team of the New England Patriots who, they rebuilt it on the fly and they did it in a year. And that defense is good, but good God, man, Drake May does not look like he is the second coming of the quarterback. He looks absolutely awful in the playoffs. He's not done well at all. And look, I get it. He's a second-year quarterback, and it's his first go round, right? But my God, it looks like he's got piss running down his leg when he's out there in the big moments. He's not looked well, and I don't think he's played well. I think he's played well enough to not get this team in trouble, and the defense has carried them. But you mean to tell me the Detroit Lions offense, if you would have done things differently, Brad Holmes, you'd have done things differently, and Dan Campbell, I don't know, maybe address the offensive coordinator position instead of hiring one of your buddies that you like to fish with or hunt with. You mean to tell me that you couldn't make an absolute mockery of Vrabel and that New England Patriot defense? Because I really feel like you could, man. When you look at the teams that got to, we'll call them the Final Four, the teams that got to the championship rounds, to me, it feels like you have the Rams number, right? Like, it feels like whenever you play the Rams, you always have the ability to pop them. I don't know what it is. I don't know if Jared Goff's got some mind games with Sean McVay. I don't know if Stafford coming to Ford Field is a little bit of his kryptonite, but they always seem to have a few chinks in the armor, right? There's always a few weak spots that the Detroit Lions figure out a way to exploit, and they might eke out the game. They might win by a field goal. They might win by a touchdown, but the Lions always seem to win that game. And then when you look at the Seahawks, that defense is really good. And Sam Darnold play a hell of a game in that championship game. But again, it's Sam Darnold. And you had him seeing those same ghosts that he's seen when he was playing for the Jets last year. To me, it feels like this season was so ripe for the taking for this team to win a damn Super Bowl. And you did nothing. You did nothing in the offseason to put this team in a position to have the chance to be able to do it. And when you look across, you look at the team that came out of the AFC, it's the New England Patriots led by Drake May, who I've already established has not played well during the playoffs. Yes, the defense is good, but man, that offense is not explosive. That offense does not look great when he's underneath, when he's inside of pressure situations. And even if they didn't advance, it would have been a Jared Stidham led Broncos team. What, like, huh? Jared Stidham? Like, look at the quarterbacks that were in this. Like, Matt Stafford's the only guy who's probably going to the Hall of Fame. And there's a question mark there. You just don't know. This was the year. But your general manager did nothing. He did nothing in the offseason. And that's where we talk about being aggressive. And does the organization operate with the urgency to win? Because it just doesn't feel like they do. And it feels like they've missed yet another opportunity. And it's so damn frustrating, man. So frustrating. How frustrated are you with the Lions watching how these playoffs have played out?
Yeah, it's when you look at it, it's something when you look with the Lions. It's always the debate has always been Lions good versus NFL good. The Lions are always in the mode of, well, we're better than the other regime, and we're going to move forward, and we're going to continue to do the things that are indicative of winning. And then you looked at just what you said.
Yep.
The Lions don't do things that other teams potentially are doing, which is, and I know people will say, well, yeah, they made free agency moves, but they all sucked. Well, that's an indictment on your general manager. You got to make better moves. And you have to make better. You can't. The Patriots did not add talent, but they added capital because they knew they spent in free agency. They traded 2 players for some draft capital. They made some moves. And also, the Seahawks, they were able to add a guy that's a special teamer in Shaheed, and he's making big plays. So you don't have to make a plethora of moves. Just be more aggressive and actually hit on the moves you're making. So
sometimes, dude, it's just one piece you have to add. Sometimes it's just one piece.
Yes, and
like,
so the Lions
how different would that defense look if you added that edge rusher?
Yeah, it's frustrating in their reply, like, why would we copy the Eagles? Why would we copy the Seahawks? Why would we copy the Patriots? Because
why the hell
rebuilt rebuilt before you've even made it to the Super Bowl once. What are you talking about? You find teams, and the Lions fans are like, well, what about the Vikings and the Bears and the Cardinals? Like, we don't look at those teams. We look at winners. We steal from winners. Why would I steal from people that lose? And we don't go. You have to go exactly. But what we're saying is there's a formula, and it's not super difficult to figure out. You have a cheap quarterback. You spend in free agency. You hit in free agency against guys that typically are productive off of winning teams. Milton Williams, Harold Landry, players that are good. You have a reasonable quarterback that is at least athletic to be able to get a first down on third down in a critical moment. And you have good talent evaluators. And when it comes down to trades, you have an opportunity to improve your team when needed. This is not all that difficult. It's not, let's go and sign guys that are, coming off the injury list from the last 2 years, and let's see if they hopefully stay healthy. This fan base would have been so much happier if they just didn't sign Davenport, Levi, and draft Josh Pascal. Just find guys that are reasonably healthy that can help contribute. And that's where all we're saying is Brett Holmes is better than what you've had, but he's not as good as what's the best.
Not as good as you think.
That's all we're saying. And he's got to get to that point. And maybe there's a chance he will. But the current plan of just drafting your own guys, being calculated in free agency, and being passive, and I don't care if you're calling all day and night and nobody picks up the phone. You got to make these things happen. You can't do the we're trying bit. Nobody cares about that. You need to go and execute. We're in the execution business, and I do think they are going to evolve to that. I think this year they're going to have to go out and maybe get the Buffalo Bills center, the Ravens center. They're going to have to spend a little bit when they restructure all these contracts to get some guys, and I think that's the thing is that go out and buy some good players. That's the secret. Hey, cuz, did you know that Stephon Diggs had a party with some pink stuff on a boat? I don't know if he would fit in the Lions culture locker room, but he balled out throughout the season and helped the team win. They've even added a couple guys that are going to face legal problems, supposedly, allegedly. So that's how it works. That's just the way it is. Talent trumps culture, and culture gets you off the mat. We get it. Thank you, Dan and Brad, for the culture change. We're not irrelevant. But now the fans, the podcasters, the YouTubers, the media will tell you the next step is to go from playoff team to consistently knocking at the door to be a Super Bowl team. And those are the things you're not doing. And I think that they see that they did say, okay, we didn't have all the answers in January, but when they start to evaluate, they're going to go, man, DJ Reed for Carlton Davis And Roy Lopez is not enough in free agency, especially when you have talent. You could have added more. You could have added a veteran offensive lineman. That's a big mistake. You could have added and added a more proven opportunity. Maybe added another tight end as opposed to somebody like a Brock Wright that you trusted. You got to make some tough moves, and you got to be accurate in your moves. And I do think, do you have trust? Because that's where we're at. Are you now seeing, because you see the Seahawks, Patriots, you saw the Rams and how they were built, and you see how the teams are winning that are coming back to the forefront because they have those guys. And you and I are the same. We don't have loyalty. Like if Les Snead came on the market and Sean McVay came on the market, bye Dan and Brett, see you later. I'm of the opinion that the Lions are always getting the guys that are like next in line to be good. And why don't they just go out and get hey, let's just go out and get Howie Roseman, let's go get Sean McVay, and let's just go get people that have actually shown that they can do it. And that might be the case. And because, I don't know if you know, history says if you don't win your first Super Bowl within 5 years with a head coach quarterback combination, it never happened. So the Lions winning would be all-time historic. And for Dan Campbell, the clock's ticking on his tenure. No coach has spent more than 7 years with one team and then won a Super Bowl. So this is year 6. So if you don't get it done this year, which is going to be tough to do with all the holes, you got one more year, and then you're going to be talking about all. So we're not just being negative. We're talking history here. We know the history of the world, and we know that right now, if Jared Goff wins with Dan Campbell their first Super Bowl together, it would be the first time it ever happened. The very first time. So pardon me, people, for being a little skeptical that it hasn't happened before, and I'm not sitting there running saying, oh yeah, the Lions are going to be the first team to buck history and be able to win. So spare me the nonsense. We're just telling you the truth. And Adam and I have always been like, get the best, and the best will perform. And right now, we're just a little skeptical if Kafka, Petzing, and the other side of the coin, because, okay, you've added help for Petzing. Where's the help for Shepard? He needs it maybe more. And am I wrong?
That's the thing, right? That's kind of where I'm like, you double down on offense, but what are you doing to help out your defense? Like, I mean, let's not act like Kelvin Shepard was some great invention for defensive coordinators. It wasn't like he blessed us with his presence. Yeah, he did an okay job. Like on a scale of like pass fail, yeah, he just passed. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like it was like, oh my God, we've got the next guy. We've got the second coming of a D coordinator. We've got the second coming of Aaron Glenn, right? Like it wasn't that good. He did an okay job. Get this man some help, or I don't know, replace his ass with somebody better. To me, it just feels like this team, like you said, it's always trying to play things safe. It's always trying to hedge that bet, and it's always trying to kind of do things on the discount. Instead of going and just you have the money, you want the BMW. Instead of just going and buying the BMW, instead you go and you buy the cheaper Audi. And it's like, yeah, it's nice, and yeah, it's fast, but it sure ain't BMW luxury. So why go and do the bushel bin dance? Why go? Why do things this way? Just spend the money. Be aggressive. Renegotiate some of these contracts. Go get some guys and address the offensive and defensive lines of this team. Go get some coaches who are going to actually make a damn difference and put this team in a position where you can win. This year right here, you should be going back to your second Super Bowl, and instead, you don't have one. You've never even sniffed the Super Bowl. Instead, you should be playing for your second one if you were aggressive. And like you said, Schneider, the general manager of the Seahawks, that guy's already rebuilt. He's already got to a Super Bowl, rebuilt, got to a Super Bowl, rebuilt, and now he's going to his third Super Bowl. Like, that's what you want. That's what you got to be able to do. You guys don't do that. You want to look at Minnesota. You want to look at Chicago. You want to look at Green Bay because they're in your division. Green Bay hasn't won a championship in forever. Look at what Howie Roseman's doing over there in Philly. That's how you should model yourself. Look at what Schneider's doing in Seattle. That's how you should model yourself, because he did it multiple ways. Drafted a young quarterback, built, got to a Super Bowl, had a high-priced quarterback, got to a Super Bowl, and then tore it all down, went signed a free agent quarterback who was discarded by the league, and got to a Super Bowl. Like, figure out where you're taking your cues from and make sure you jot those notes down well and just do it better, man.
Yeah.
Just do it better. Be better. Like, it's so frustrating because, like I said, you should be playing for your second Super Bowl.
Yeah, right.
You haven't even made it to the dance once.
Right. And the fans just turn around and are just so easy to be pleased. You got the failed interim coach of the Giants.
Yeah.
So and great, he impressed you in a game, but and it's so true. What I love is there's a healthy amount of banter in the fan base. You got the slappies, which is cool. You get the hopeful crowd, but also too, think about it. Daniel Jones was working with the Giants, and okay, he's working with Dayball and Kafka. He looks pedestrian. He kind of looks like your quarterback, Jared Goff. He leaves, and he goes to another organization. And
guy looks like a freaking MVP.
And all of a sudden, he looks better. So how is it like, are you not able to push for your guys? Is Joe Shane really like the overlord and doesn't listen to you? Or do you have a say in who these linemen are? Like, you don't just get to say, well, we had a shitty line and that's what happened all the time. Well, unfortunately, you have a say in that. That's part of your job, is to get the general manager to get the right people. Like, it is not just a totalitarian thing where the general manager's like, I will select who I select and you sit there and take it. Like, that would be ridiculous if someone did that. You would lose a locker room that fast. Obviously, which is funny, is the Bills owner dropped the hammer on the coach. It was like, the coach wanted Keon Coleman. What? This guy didn't want it. But in the end, the leadership means that you fall on the sword when the decision goes well, and you fall on the sword if the decision doesn't go well. That is the lack of leadership. Whether it's right or wrong, the owner's just like, yeah, my guy who's sitting right here, he didn't want Keon Coleman. By the way, Keon's still here under contract. It's kind of awkward to be talking like that. So I do think that Dan, Brad have an equal say in talent, and they understand what they're looking for. But all we're saying is just add, like, hey, if some guy scores like 58 on your talent meter, but he's got a personality of a dipshit, you know what? Take the chance on a guy that can potentially sack the quarterback, but he might end up in the strip club one night, maybe the night before the playoffs. Who cares? Like, it might happen. Who cares? But, if he might be one of those guys that can be Michael Jordan and party until 4 a.m. and then show up and still get 3 sacks. You know what I mean? Like, just, maybe adjust slightly your ramifications for talent acquisition to include a lot more talent. Like, I don't care if the guy is a church-going dude and he's great in the community, but he gets 2 sacks a year. Just get me a dog that can get 10 sacks a year, play well, stay healthy, and figure out how to help this team win. Listen, the Patriots aren't choir boys, and we all know what the hell's going on there. They're going to be, potentially having to settle or allegedly doing some things to figure out what the hell's going on. 2 legal stories within the same week for the Patriots. I'm not saying to go look for that, but if a guy's talented, in the end, this fan base is all about talent trumps all. And so that's what we hope, that when we turn the page now to the Pistons and Red Wings, it's looking closer and closer, like, okay, the Pistons might be the number 1 seed because overall in the East. And you're like, oh my goodness, the Red Wings are playing well, up and down a little bit recently. But of course, a back-to-back loss is always scheduled in the National Hockey League. But between the Pistons and Wings, which team is surprising you based on their spot right now? The NHL is crazy. The spot that the Red Wings are in, 2 losses, and you shoot from like first to last. It is crazy to think about what's going on. The Pistons, I thought, would have success, being that they had Cade Cunningham. They got a little taste of the playoffs, and I was a little bit surprised. So if you ask me who am I more surprised by, I am a little bit more surprised it's the Pistons being atop of the conference, because I thought that Beasley leaving might have made the team slightly worse. They do need clearly, we all watched the Houston game, and that showed you your deficiency. That showed you, all right, going toe-to-toe with Durant and their stars, you fell off. So you need one more star. The problem is you don't want to give up 3 of your stars and draft picks. So I know we always say be aggressive, but this Pistons team maybe has earned the spot to say, all right, maybe year 2, we can be patient. Maybe add a role player. Maybe add somebody like a Luke Kennard that can shoot, but not a superstar, and let them go into the 2nd round, 3rd round, maybe the conference title, conference championship. Maybe get a chance to get to the finals and just get blown out by, Shea Gillis, and see what happens. But to me, I think the Red Wings are in that spot where, you know what, they're playing well. They got some veterans. If there's an opportunity to make a deal, I think it's more imperative that they show that they can be a team to be aggressive because they might need it most. I think that the Pistons can be gritty and get to the second round and advance. I don't think the same way with the Red Wings. I think that they might be a team that's just good enough to get to the postseason, but we shall see regarding if their defense is good enough.
You know, I thought that I had a very interesting take, and I thought that I was going to lay something on you that was going to kind of make you stop and think for a minute. But after you talked, I feel like we are kind of in the same spot, right? So like with both of these teams, I would say that the Red Wings being where the Red Wings are at, where they're right there vying for that top spot, was probably the most surprising and maybe the most impressive thing to me, right? Because going into the season, it was more, they need to make the playoffs. They need to make the playoffs. They need to make the playoffs. And it was kind of more of a hope that they get there and that they can do some things. Otherwise, we're going to have this tough conversation about Steve Yzerman and possibly tearing this all down. I don't think the expectation was for them to be a team that is vying for the number one seed in the Eastern Conference. And that is what this team is playing for right now as they head towards the All-Star break. This is a team that is dangerous. They've got the league's attention, and I don't think any of us expected this team to be here. I think we expected this team to be somewhere between a 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th seed, vying for a playoff spot, hoping that as you got into April, this team was doing the things necessary to lock up at least that 7th or that 8th seed when the playoffs rolled around, not being at the very, very top of the East. So I think that was probably what's most surprising. Now with the Pistons, with the East being wide open because of all of the injuries, I think we expected them to be good. Did we expect them to be this good? No. But we expected them to contend. We expected them to get into the playoffs. We expected them to advance in the playoffs. We expected them to be a hard out. I think the thing that has surprised me the most about the Pistons is the way that they have played and the way that they dismantle teams. And I don't know if it's just them being young, them being try hard, them maybe not knowing any better, and other teams maybe, you know, it's a scheduled loss. It's a load management day, that type of thing. I'm not sure, but the way the Pistons have played, it's this take no prisoners type of basketball. And I think the way that they have played and the style that they are playing with is the thing that has surprised me the most about them. And I think when you break it down, both these teams need to make a move at the trade deadline. I think the Red Wings need to make a more impactful move than the Pistons. I feel like the Pistons are in a spot where, again, the East is kind of wide open. It feels like the Pistons have a bit of a stranglehold on it. If you can go get a role player who can shoot and help space the floor, I feel like you're going to be in a really, really good spot. That being said, I would love them to go make a more impactful move, but if you are worried about giving up future assets, future pieces, I understand. But I feel like the Red Wings right now, with where they're at, if you can go out and you can get a superstar, or you can get a guy who is a top 6 forward or a top 4 defenseman, a guy who can kind of take over parts of games, not even the whole game, parts of games, I think instantly you become that much more dangerous and you become that much more of a harder out, and you have a actual chance to really make some noise when you get into the playoffs. And look, I thought I was going to have this revolutionary thought, and I was going to present this to you, and you're going to be like, hey, yeah, that's interesting. And instead, you kind of made my arguments for me. So I appreciate that me and you are on the same wavelength here. We both feel like the Detroit Pistons and the Detroit Red Wings, while their play has been absolutely surprising, the Wings being in the position that they are in is probably the most surprising. Yeah. And the Pistons feel like they are closer to making that championship game, because I don't think any of us necessarily expect either the Wings or the Pistons to win a title this year, but we feel like they could be a move or two away from really inserting their name into that discussion and us having to take that very, very seriously.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's going to be a fun ride. Even though it's cold in the winter, the Pistons, Wings are heating up, man. It's important. This week, Michigan State get to declare themselves a little bit better regarding their status in the world of college basketball. So it's fun, man. It's been great. And kudos to Indiana. They went 16-0 in college football. It's going to be interesting to see how teams respond to Curt Cignetti being able to go out there, spend, but also reasonably spend on older athletes. What do you know? Older athletes, bigger, stronger, faster, with a veteran quarterback might be a recipe to be able to win. So we'll see how college football now adapts. It's a fun time because the world of sports is now bumping. We now get a chance to see just how the Seahawks and the Patriots handle the week off and to handle the adjustments that they got to make. Next week, we'll have our Super Bowl preview. We'll talk about the further thoughts about the Pistons and maybe what trades might be out there, maybe a reasonable trade. I brought up Kennard today. Do they take a swing? Do they need Porter Jr.? Do they need somebody else? So we'll see what these Pistons are about and an opportunity to see the Red Wings continue their thriving. We have to credit John Gibson. He's done a good job. After an early, slow start, I think he's settled in to what the Red Wings kind of thought that they would have, and I'm really appreciative of the work and grind that he's had, and the Red Wings are putting up points, and it's good to see the guys being able to be rewarded and earn some points and to be gritty, have an opportunity. Yeah, they may give up a lead, but they're still having a reasonable amount of success in the overtime periods and earning some points. So it's fun. It's not something where we have to totally dismiss the Pistons and Red Wings, which will make these winter months fun for Doc and Jock. Make sure you follow Adam on X at AdamRSCRLZ. Follow us at Detroit Podcast. If you've agreed or disagreed with anything that we've said, if you feel like the Lions are on their pace and they'll rebound quickly and Brad Holmes will wave his magic wand and be able to fix everything, let us know. It'll be interesting to see what you guys think of the response that Adam and I had. And are you more optimistic? Are you more pessimistic? Do you think the run is completely over? Does it make you feel even worse to see teams be able to get back faster than the Lions? It's frustrating, but we'll see what the response is from the Detroit Lions front office regarding their offseason talent acquisition strategy. For the Jock, Adam Srozinski, I am the Doc, John McAroon. Thank you so much kindly for listening to the latest episode of Doc and Jock. I can't wait to fire it up next week for the latest episode, which will be featured on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
You fucking podcasters. I said don't let them in here.